Welcome back. You're still watching Business Watch, powered by Nedbank Eswatini. I'm joined by the head of treasury at Nedbank, Bongani Mabuza, to give us the latest analysis on our stock markets. A very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us once again. I hope your day is going well. We're going to just get an overview, Mr. Mabuza, on the currencies. Tell us what is happening on Goma commodities as well as equities.
Thank you, Luli. It's a pleasure to be here, and greetings to your viewers. I'll just start with what's happening in markets right now in terms of, firstly, foreign exchange. What you're seeing is that markets are mostly muted, with not much happening, especially with regards to the rand. And this is because the expectations of the SA budget speech happening this afternoon. We also saw some data come out. Last week it was the US inflation numbers that came out better than or stronger than expected. We also saw SA unemployment numbers come out yesterday, which showed unemployment in South Africa standing at 32.1%, which is an increase from 31.9% in the last quarter. This morning there was a mild reaction to SA inflation numbers, which came out at 5.3%, whereas the market was expecting SA inflation numbers to be 5.4%. This is also an increase from December at 5.1%. As a result, the dollar against the dollar, euro, and pound, the langeni is relatively flat. And moving on to commodities markets, what we're seeing there is also relatively flat movement of mainly gold and Brent crude. With gold, 1 ounce of gold has a price of $2,028 per ounce, and we have seen gold recover in the past week. We've had 4 consecutive days of gains in the gold prices, and we expect that there will be some price movement in the price of gold after the release of minutes of the US Federal Reserve. This is expected to be later this evening. In terms of the Brent crude number, we saw a slight increase yesterday, but flat today. I think this is due to higher equity indices in China and concerns around demand and supply due to the tensions in the Middle East.
Okay, so I want us to talk about the budget speech expectations. We know that Minister Rakenberg is expected to table his budget speech this Friday. What can we expect looking at the numbers, especially in the dollar? Around 18 and 19 50 cents. What can we expect after the minister has tabled his speech?
No, that's correct. As we mentioned, markets are really flat, waiting for the budget speech, and we'll see some price movement as a result there. We have the South African budget speech today, and then we have the Eswatini budget speech on Friday. Both are important. In terms of the SA budget speech, the big expectations is for the finance minister to announce that South Africa needs to raise an additional 15 billion rands in revenue, and where that revenue is going to come from. The expectations are that either there will be an increase in taxes, either from VAT increase or an increase in personal and business taxes. We'll see what comes out of that, but it's a tricky balance from an SA perspective because it is an election year in South Africa. So the finance minister will have to balance between austerity, which is needed to get the country's finances in check, as well as populism, which is needed to win elections. Coming closer to home, there are high expectations for the finance minister's budget speech on Friday. I think what most people will be looking at is what it will say with regards to capital project spending. We know that there's a lot of capital projects that are in the pipeline. From a local perspective, these are from government spending as well as business spending, which is private sector spending. So what the budget speech will say about capital projects, and as well as what the allocation of the country's high receipts of SACCO funds, how those will be spent in the coming year. I think it will be very interesting to see what happens, and also the social spending around healthcare, around education.
Okay, before we conclude, Mr. Mabuza, tell us what is happening on equities. What is the latest news on equities?
Thanks. I think the story is the same. we have seen relatively a slight decline in equity prices across the board. When you look at US prices, when you look at UK prices, as well as on the JSC, slight decrease in prices. And what we've seen is that there's an expectation of data that's going to come out today, especially in the US when you talk about the release of the minutes of the January Federal Reserve meeting. That's going to move markets. So markets are just waiting for that. Coming closer to South Africa, the expectation is that the budget speech is going to move prices around commodities. In the UK, markets are still digesting the global the global changes in macro factors, particularly around the hawkish inflation numbers and what they mean for interest rate expectations. We also saw in the last week the UK as well as Japan slip into technical recessions. We'll see the markets are digesting that, and we'll see how they react going forward to that.
All right, thank you so much. Before I let you go, Mr. Mabuza, just quickly give us an update on the monthly statistical release.
Thanks, Lulu. This is important data because it is local data. We saw on Valentine's Day, the central bank released the monthly statistical release, which is important because it shows mostly the three key factors. The first is the gross official reserves, which are up 10.9% month on month. This is due to the SACU receipts which the country received. Credit to the private sector is up about 2.2% month on month to 19 billion, which is good. So, and lastly, the domestic liquid assets are at 7.9 billion, which are down about 1.8%.
All right, thank you for that analysis, Mr. Mabuza. See you next week, Wednesday. That's it for our market analysis. Let's take a break.
Thank you.